The Wolf and the Ass on Trial. A wolf, while travelling, came across an ass. Believing he had caught the ass in his trap, he planned to eat him. But simply eating him wasn't enough. The wolf, wanting more, began to mock the ass. He said to the ass, "Don't be afraid, I am not so unjust as to harm you without finding some fault in your life. Let's each confess our wrongs. If my wrongs are worse than yours, you may safely return to your pasture, free from harm. But if you've done worse than I, then you should judge whether it's fair for you to be punished by me." After saying this, the wolf listed his wrongs: attacking sheep and goats, stealing young goats and lambs, strangling cattle, and even attacking or killing shepherds. The wolf spoke of these deeds humbly, as though they were justified, trying to make them sound less wrong. Then he urged the ass to confess his own wrongs. The ass thought about his actions, but couldn't find anything to blame himself for. He believed he hadn't done anything wrong. After thinking for a while, he finally said, "Once, while carrying my master's load of vegetables, a fly bothered my belly. I turned my head to blow it away, and a vegetable leaf fell into my mouth. I accidentally chewed and swallowed it. But I was punished right away. My master, who was behind me, hit me with his stick, and I immediately vomited it out." Before the ass could finish, the wolf, seizing on the words like a predator catching a lamb, shouted, "What a terrible crime! How could the earth not swallow you for such a disgusting act? How ungrateful you are to your kind master! He grew, watered, tended to, and cared for those vegetables to make a living, and yet you ruined it all. His punishment shows how deeply you hurt him. It seems justice didn't think that punishment was enough, and so you were left to face even more consequences. It looks like I've caught you, even though I wasn't looking for you." With that, the wolf attacked the ass, tore him apart, and ate him. This was the wolf's plan all along. He pretended to be just, trying to make his unfair actions seem righteous. In the end, he acted like the most unjust people, who, after taking what doesn't belong to them, try to make their actions seem justified by speaking in a way that makes them appear just. 453. The Wolf and the Shepherds. A wolf, passing by, saw some shepherds inside their tent eating a lamb. He approached them and said, "What an uproar you would make if I were to do the same." 454. The Mouse and the Oyster. A hungry mouse sneaked through the house looking for food. It saw an oyster with its shell wide open. The mouse eagerly bit into the soft, moist flesh inside. But suddenly the oyster's shell snapped shut, trapping the mouse inside. The mouse was stuck, unable to escape. Its own greed had led to its downfall. It had become the prisoner and the cause of its own doom. 455. Momus and Aphrodite. Momus, the god of mockery, criticized everything he saw, but when he faced Aphrodite, he was at a loss. Her beauty was flawless, leaving him with nothing to condemn. Frustrated, he resorted to mocking her sandals, saying they squeaked too much. 456. The Fool and the Sieve. Olympicus attempted to distinguish between disease and symptoms, but there are many flaws in his approach. This reminds me of a fool trying to plug the holes in a sieve. The fool either cannot find a way to block the holes, or fails to block them. Which of these interpretations should we address first, and which should we omit? It would take too long to refute all the errors. From Galen's On the Therapeutic Method, De Methodo Medendi. Thor Rider and the Runaway Horse. A man was riding a wild horse that ran away with him. The horse was moving so quickly that he couldn't get off. A man who was in his path asked where he was going, and the rider replied, "Wherever this beast chooses." If someone were to ask you where you're headed, your answer would likely be the same. Either, in general, wherever your desires take you, or more specifically, where pleasure takes you today, imagination tomorrow, and greed the next day. Sometimes it is anger, fear, or another emotion that leads you. 458. The Ass and the Snake called Dipsas. There is a snake called the Dipsas, meaning thirst-provoker, which reveals its nature. It is smaller than a viper but kills more quickly. Those who are bitten burn with thirst, drinking endlessly until they burst. Let me share a story about this creature to show my knowledge. It is said that when Prometheus stole fire, Zeus, angered by the theft, gave those who informed on it a drug that prevents aging. They loaded the drug onto a donkey. In the summer, the thirsty donkey came to a spring, but a snake guarding the spring tried to stop it. In its desperation, the donkey gave the anti-aging drug to the snake in exchange for a drink. Thus they exchanged gifts. The donkey quenched its thirst, while the snake shed its old age and took on the donkey's thirst. 459. The Curious Donkey and the Potter's Shop. Once upon a time, in a bustling marketplace, there lived a man who owned a donkey. One day, as they were walking through the streets, the donkey's curiosity got the better of it. The man was driving his donkey when it stuck its head into a potter's shop. The poor thing was just peeping around, but the sight startled the potter's pet birds, causing them to fly into a panic and smash the pottery all over the place. The potter, understandably upset, took the man to court. When the driver was questioned, he defended himself, saying, "Your Honour, I'm being charged with ass-peeping." Translator's note: since the original text could not be obtained, the translator has reconstructed it. In fact, in Greek, the words for a person's buttocks and a donkey, ass, have different pronunciations. It is likely that this story is related to a Greek idiom. In fact, in English, the word arse was traditionally used to refer to a person's buttocks. 460. The Ass and His Shadow. A traveller hired an ass to take him to a faraway place. The day was unbearably hot and the sun was blazing. When the traveller stopped to rest, he sought shelter under the donkey's shadow. But the shadow was too small to cover both the traveller and the donkey's owner. The two began to argue over who had the right to the shadow. The owner claimed that he had rented the donkey, not its shadow. The traveller argued that, by renting the donkey, he had rented the shadow as well. The argument escalated into a fight. While they were busy fighting, the donkey ran off. In fighting over the shadow, they lost the donkey. 461. The Eyes and the Honey. Aesop told a story about the eyes. They believed they were the most important part of the body. However, they noticed the mouth enjoying all kinds of pleasures, especially honey, which is the sweetest thing of all. The eyes became upset and complained to their owner, but when the owner put honey in the eyes, they felt a sharp pain and started crying. The eyes then realized that honey, which they thought was so wonderful, was actually harsh and unpleasant for them. 400. The Privilege of Grief. It is said that one of the ancient philosophers visited Queen Arsinoe, who was mourning the loss of her son. He shared this story with her. He told her that, at the time when Zeus was distributing honours to the deities, mourning was not present. She arrived after the honours had already been given out. When she demanded that some honour be granted to her as well, Zeus, confused because all the honours had been used up, finally gave her the honour typically given to those who have passed away, tears and grief. Just as the other gods cherish those who honour them, mourning also does. "Therefore, madame," he said, "if you treat her with disrespect, she will not come near you. But if you honour her with the tribute granted to her, which are grief and lamentation, she will love you and will stay with you as long as you continue to honour her." By telling this story, the philosopher successfully convinced the queen and helped ease her mourning and sorrow. 463. The Monkeys and the Pyrrhic Dance. The king of Egypt once taught some monkeys how to dance the Pyrrhic dance. Monkeys are known for copying human behavior easily, so they quickly learned the dance. Dressed in purple robes and masks, they performed it well. At first, the audience was impressed by the spectacle, but then one person, noticing the monkeys' distraction, threw some nuts into the middle of the dancers. When the monkeys saw the nuts, they immediately forgot the dance. Instead of continuing their performance, they started behaving like monkeys again. They tore off their masks and ripped their robes, fighting each other for the nuts. The entire dance was ruined, and the audience burst into laughter. 464. The Monkeys and the City. The monkeys gathered for an assembly to discuss founding a city. After some deliberation, they decided it would be beneficial. Just as they were about to begin the work, an elderly monkey intervened. "Wait," the old monkey cautioned. "Consider this carefully. By enclosing ourselves within city walls, we would become easier targets for capture." 465. The Butcher, the Shepherd, and the Lamb. A shepherd and a butcher were walking together on a road. They spotted a plump lamb that had strayed from its flock and was left behind. Both men rushed to catch the lamb. In those days, Animals could speak like humans. The lamb asked, "Why do you want to take me?" After learning their professions, the lamb turned to the shepherd. "You're just a killer of sheep," it said to the butcher. "Your hands are stained with our blood, but this man," it nodded to the shepherd, "is happy when we thrive." The birth of Eros. Long ago, when Aphrodite was born, the gods held a grand feast. Among the guests was Plenty, son of Meti. After the banquet, Poverty sat begging by the doors. Plenty, drunk on nectar, wandered into Zeus's garden and fell into a deep slumber. Seeing her chance, Poverty lay beside Plenty and conceived Eros. Thus, Eros became Aphrodite's servant and follower. He inherited a love for beauty like Aphrodite herself. As the child of Plenty and Poverty, Eros embodied two contrasting natures. From his mother, Poverty, he inherited constant need. He was rough and strong, living without shoes or home, sleeping on the ground, always dwelling in want. Yet from his father, Plenty, he gained a desire for beauty and goodness. He was brave and passionate, a clever hunter, always weaving new plans and seeking wisdom. Eros existed between immortality and mortality. He thrived when prosperous, died when not, but always came back to life. What he gained always slipped away, leaving him neither poor nor rich. He lived in balance between wisdom and ignorance, forever seeking what he lacked. Faun the Satyr and the Fire. When the satyr first saw fire, he was eager to kiss and embrace it. But Prometheus warned him to be cautious. He said the satyr might regret losing his beard if he got too close to something that burns everything it touches. Yet this same fire is incredibly useful to humans. It gives us light and heat, and for those who know how to use it, fire is an excellent tool in many crafts. From these examples, we learn how to deal with our enemies. By finding ways to use them for our benefit, we can turn even their apparent hostility into something useful. Fourfold Sixtone and her mother. Cleobulus said, "I will tell you a story from my daughter, which she shared with her brother." She said that the moon asked her mother to weave a garment that would fit her size. The mother replied, "How can I weave it to fit your size? At one time you are full and round, at another time crescent-shaped, and at yet another only half your full size. In the same way, my dear Chersias, you can see there is no fixed measure for possessions that applies to a foolish and worthless man." 469. The Lion, the Bull, and his Horns. A lion saw a bull. Though very hungry, he feared the bull's horns. The lion knew the cure for his hunger, but couldn't use it. As hunger grew stronger, he was driven to fight the bull, but the horns still scared him. In the end, hunger overcame his fear. The lion pretended to be friendly, planning to trick the bull. When direct force seems too risky, cunning is used. "I admire your strength and beauty," said the lion. "Your head, your body, your feet and hooves are all wonderful, but those horns look heavy. Why not remove them? You'll look better and feel lighter. Why keep horns when you live in peace with me?" The bull believed the lion. Once he shed his horns, he became easy prey. The lion ate without fear. 470. The cicadas. It is truly inappropriate for anyone who loves the Muses to have never heard this story. The tale goes that these creatures, once men, lived before the birth of the Muses. When the Muses were born and song came into existence, some men were so overwhelmed with joy that they sang and sang, forgetting to eat or drink, until they eventually died. From these men, the cicada tribe was born. These cicadas have a gift from the Muses. From the moment of their birth, they need no food or drink. They sing continuously without sustenance until they die. When they do, they go to the Muses and report who has honored each of them on earth. 471. The Lice and the Farmer. A farmer was bitten by fleas while he was ploughing. He stopped his work twice to shake them out of his shirt, but when they bit him again, he burned his shirt to avoid any further interruption. 472. The Jackdaw and the Peacocks. A jackdaw, full of foolish pride, found some peacock feathers that had fallen to the ground. He picked them up and put them on, hoping to join the beautiful peacock flock. He scorned the other jackdaws, thinking himself superior. The peacocks, however, quickly tore the feathers off the jackdaw and pecked at him until he fled. Badly beaten, the jackdaw returned to his own kind, but they rejected him, mocking him for his foolishness. One of the jackdaws, whom he had previously scorned, said to him, "If you had been happy living among us and accepted what nature had given you, You would not have suffered the humiliation from the peacocks, nor would you be facing our rejection now. The Hare and the Sparrow. A hare, caught by an eagle, was weeping bitterly. A sparrow, seeing the hare's distress, mocked him, saying, "Where is your famous speed now? Why have your feet failed you?" While the sparrow was still speaking, a hawk swooped down and killed him, even as he continued to scream in vain. The hare, barely alive, said, "This makes my death easier. Just moments ago, you laughed at my misfortune thinking you were safe. Now you are crying out with a lament that mirrors my own." 474. The Wolf, the Fox, and the Monkey. The wolf accused the fox of theft, but the fox denied the charge. The judge was a monkey. Each of the parties presented their case, and the monkey then delivered the following verdict. "You, wolf, I do not believe you lost what you claim was stolen. As for you, fox, I believe you stole the goods, no matter how much you deny it. Once you get a reputation for dirty tricks, nobody is going to take you seriously, even if you are telling the truth." 475. The Cobbler and the King. A cobbler who had lost everything became completely broke. To make a living, he moved to a new town where no one knew him and started working as a doctor. He sold a so-called antidote, using a fake name for it, and made grand claims about its powers. This allowed him to gain a large reputation. When the king of the city fell seriously ill and needed a doctor, he decided to test the cobbler. The king asked for a goblet, filled it with water, and pretended to mix in a deadly poison along with the cobbler's antidote. The king then ordered the cobbler to drink the mixture, promising a reward if he did. The cobbler, terrified by the prospect of death, immediately confessed that he had no knowledge of medicine and that his reputation had been built only on the gullibility of the people. The king then called the people together and said, "How foolish are you? You trusted this man with matters of life and death, yet no one would trust him with a simple pair of shoes." This story applies to those who are deceived by the cunning of frauds who take advantage of others' ignorance. 476. The Old Man, the Donkey and the Pack Saddles. When a change of government happens, the only thing that changes for the poor is the name of their master. A fearful old man was leading his donkey out to pasture. Suddenly, he heard the sound of the enemy approaching and was terrified. He urged the donkey to run away so they wouldn't be caught. But the donkey, stubbornly, asked, "Tell me, do you think the victor will make me carry 2 pack saddles instead of 1? The old man replied that he didn't think so. "Then, what does it matter who my master is," said the donkey, "as long as I still carry only 1 saddle?" 477. The Sheep, the Stag, and the Wolf. A stag asked a sheep to lend him a measure of wheat, offering the wolf as his guarantor. The sheep, suspecting deceit, replied, "The wolf always takes what he wants and disappears. You're quick to run away at the first sign of trouble. How will I find either of you when the debt is due?" When a liar seeks dishonest guarantors, he's not trying to make a deal, but to play a dirty trick. The Sheep, the Dog, and the Wolf. A dog falsely accused the sheep, demanding that she pay him back a loaf of bread that he claimed she had borrowed from him. The sheep, however, insisted that she had never received any bread from him. When they appeared before a judge, the dog claimed to have witnesses. The wolf was called in, and he testified that the dog had indeed lent the bread to the sheep. Then a kite was brought in and claimed to have seen the sheep take the bread. Finally, an excipitor entered and asked the sheep, "Do you deny that you took it?" Defeated by 3 false witnesses, the sheep was forced to pay back what she had never received. To do so, she sold her wool. A few days later, the sheep found the same wolf lying dead in a ditch. "This," she said, "is the reward that gods give to liars. Wicked liars generally get their just deserts." 479. The woman in labour, a woman full term in her pregnancy, lay on the ground, moaning and weeping as she prepared to give birth. Her husband urged her to lie on the bed, thinking it would ease her burden, but the woman refused, saying, "I doubt my troubles could end in the very place where they began." No one willingly returns to a place where they were hurt. 480. The Mother Dog and Her Puppies. A dog who was about to give birth to puppies asked another dog if she could give birth in her kennel. The other dog agreed. Later, when the owner of the kennel asked for the space back, the mother dog begged for a little more time until her puppies were strong enough to follow her. When the new deadline passed, the owner of the kennel began to demand her space more forcefully. The mother dog, now defiant, replied, "If you think you can handle me and all my puppies, then come and take it." 481. The Old Lion and the Donkey. An old lion, weakened by age and about to breathe his last, lay on the ground. A wild boar approached him, filled with rage, and with his sharp tusks he stabbed the lion, avenging a past injury. Soon after, a bull came along, and with his deadly horns he attacked the lion's frail body. Finally, a donkey saw that the lion could be harmed without consequence, and he kicked the lion in the head with his hooves. Gasping his final breath, the lion cried out, "I endured the attacks of the brave beasts, but now, to suffer from you, you disgrace of nature, I die a second death." When someone loses the respect they once commanded, their pitiful state makes them an easy target for even the lowest of creatures. 482. The Dogs and the Crocodiles. Dogs drink from the Nile River while running to avoid being caught by crocodiles. One day, a dog was swiftly running along the Nile, lapping up water as he went. A crocodile noticed him and called out, "Drink as much as you like. Take your time, don't be afraid." The dog replied, "I would gladly do as you say, if I didn't know you were craving my flesh." Those who try to deceive the wise not only waste their efforts, but also become objects of ridicule. The Dog and the Vulture. A dog and a vulture were digging up human bones. The dog found a treasure and desecrated it by staying there. He was struck by a craving for wealth, which led him to pay the penalty for his sacrilege. While guarding the treasure, he forgot about food and was consumed by hunger. A vulture, standing nearby, said to him, "O dog, you deserve this suffering, for you coveted royal riches, though you were content with the crossroads and raised in filth. What good has finding these riches done for you?" This story applies to the greedy, who often perish from exhaustion before they can ever satisfy their insatiable desires. 4484. The Donkey and the Wild Boar. One day a donkey met a wild boar and greeted him, saying, "Good day, brother." The boar, offended, rejected the donkey's greeting and demanded to know why the donkey would make such an outrageous claim. The donkey, in response, extended his hoof and said, "Even if you deny any resemblance, this certainly looks a lot like your snout." The boar, wanting to react in a noble way, restrained his anger and said, "I could easily avenge myself, but I don't want to stain myself with the blood of such a coward. You should have been left injured or torn apart for your insult." A foolish person often tries to get a laugh by teasing others, only to insult them, which can lead to serious trouble. 485. The Frogs and the Fighting Bulls. Two bulls were locked in a fierce battle in a meadow near a marsh. A frog, watching from the safety of the reeds, trembled with fear. "Why are you so afraid?" asked a younger frog. "Don't you understand?" the old frog replied. "The loser will be driven from the meadow and will seek refuge here. When he does, his heavy hooves will crush everything in his path, including us." The younger frog scoffed at the warning, but soon the defeated bull, forced to flee, entered the marsh. As he searched for shelter, his hooves trampled countless frogs beneath him. Now wiser but full of sorrow, the young frog understood the struggles of the powerful can bring disaster to the weak, even from afar. 486. The Doves and the Kite. A flock of doves kept fleeing from a kite, narrowly escaping death with their swift wings. The kite, thinking of a new strategy, decided to deceive them. "Why live in constant fear?" he said. "Make me your king, and I will protect you from all dangers." The doves, fooled by his words, made the kite their king. But as soon as he had power, he began devouring them one by one, using his sharp talons to maintain control. One of the surviving doves sighed, "We deserve this. We were foolish to trust our lives to our enemy. Those who seek safety from the wicked will find only destruction." 487. The Lion and the Two Men. A lion stood over a young bull he had killed when a robber appeared and demanded a share of the prey. The lion replied, "I would give you some, if you weren't already in the habit of taking whatever you want." With that, the lion rejected the scoundrel's request. By chance, an innocent traveller came upon the same spot. Seeing the fierce lion, he stepped back in fear. The lion spoke gently to him, saying, There's no need to be afraid. Please take the portion that your modesty deserves." The lion then divided the bull's body and retreated into the woods, allowing the man to approach freely. This is an admirable example of behavior, but in reality greed often thrives, while modesty remains unrewarded. 4 Eagle, the Sow, and the Cat. An eagle built her nest high in an oak tree. A cat made her home in a hollow halfway up the tree, where she gave birth to kittens. At the base of the tree, a wild sow settled with her piglets. This chance community was eventually ruined by the cat's cunning and malicious plot. First, the cat climbed to the eagle's nest and said, "We're in danger. Look at that sow digging below. She plans to uproot the tree and attack our young on the ground." Frightened, the eagle remained in her nest. Next, the cat crept down to the sow's den and warned, "Your piglets are at risk. The eagle is ready to snatch them as soon as you leave for food." Terrified, the sow stayed put. Having spread fear, the cat hid safely in her hollow. She snuck out at night to feed herself and her kittens, while pretending to be scared during the day. The eagle didn't leave her branches, fearing disaster. The sow didn't venture out, trying to protect her home from the eagle. In the end, both the eagle and the sow, along with their young, starved to death. This provided a plentiful feast for the cat and her kittens. This story shows how a deceitful person can cause great harm. 489. Tiberius Caesar and his attendant. In Rome, there is a group of people who are always bustling around, busy without a real purpose. They waste their time on trivial matters, making a big fuss over nothing. They annoy each other and are despised by everyone else. I want to try and correct this group with a true story, one that's worth listening to. Tiberius Caesar was travelling to Naples when he arrived at his estate in Misenum. This estate had been built by Lucullus on a high hill, offering views of both the Sicilian and the Tuscan seas. As Caesar walked through the lush greenery, one of his household stewards appeared. He was dressed in an Egyptian cotton tunic with fringes hanging from his shoulders. The steward started sprinkling water on the hot ground with a wooden basin, acting as though he was busy helping Caesar, but everyone just laughed at him. The steward then ran ahead, using shortcuts known only to him, and began to settle the dust in another area. When Caesar saw what he was doing, he called out, "Hey, you!" The steward hurried up to Caesar, excited, thinking a reward was coming his way. Caesar, with a touch of humour, said, "You haven't done much, and your efforts have come to nothing. If you want me to give you a slap that will set you free, it will cost you far more than that." Note, this phrase reflects the Roman practice of slave manumission. The slap that sets you free was part of the formal ritual for freeing a slave. When a master slapped the slave's cheek, it symbolized the recognition of the slave as a free person. 490. The Eagle and the Crow. An eagle carried a tortoise high into the air, but the tortoise's body was safely hidden inside its hard shell, making it impervious to harm. A crow flew by, noticing the eagle with the tortoise. "You've got quite the catch," she remarked, "but unless I show you what to do, the weight will only wear you down for nothing." The eagle, willing to share the meal, listened to the crow's suggestion. "Drop the shell onto the rocks below. It will break, and you'll be able to eat the meat inside." The eagle followed the crow's advice, and when the shell hit the rocks and shattered, the eagle feasted on the tortoise's flesh, sharing it generously with the crow. In the end, even something protected by nature's design was no match for the two of them, and the tortoise met a tragic fate. No one is truly safe from the powerful, and when a deceitful advisor is involved, even the strongest can be undone by force and trickery. The Two Mules. 2 mules were walking along, each carrying different loads. One mule carried bags full of money, and the other mule carried sacks filled with barley. The rich mule, proud of his load, lifted his head high and shook the little bell around his neck. Meanwhile, his companion walked at a calm, steady pace. Suddenly, robbers ambushed the mules. In the chaos of the attack, the rich mule was wounded by a sword and lost his money, while the robbers ignored the barley. When the mule who had lost everything began to complain, the other mule said, "I'm glad to have been treated with contempt. It means I've lost nothing, and I'm unharmed." This fable shows that being poor carries little risk, while wealth can bring trouble. 492. The Stag and the Oxen. A stag, fleeing from hunters, ran to a nearby farm and hid in an ox stall. He begged the oxen to help him, and one of them replied, "Poor thing, why come here to die? You'd be safer in the woods or across the fields." The stag pleaded, "Just hide me for now. When night comes, I'll leave safely." The farmhands came to feed the oxen, but didn't notice the stag. Even the overseer, who checked everything, missed him. Relieved, the stag thanked the oxen for their help. One of them warned, "We wish you well, but beware of the man with 100 eyes. If he sees you, your life is lost." Later, the master entered the barn. Seeing his oxen were thin, he began to inspect the stall carefully. "Why is there so little fodder? No bedding, and these cobwebs?" As he checked everything, he spotted the stag's antlers. He called for his servants to kill the stag and take it away. The master's sharp eye saw more in his own domain than anyone else could. 493. The Old Woman and the Wine Jar. An old woman noticed an empty wine jar lying on the ground. Though drained, the noble vessel still emitted a pleasant aroma from the remnants of the fine wine it once held. The woman eagerly inhaled the scent, drawing it deeply through her nostrils. She exclaimed, "Oh, what a delightful fragrance! How exquisite you must have been when full, if your mere traces are so wonderful." Those who know the author in his prime will understand the meaning of this tale. 494. The Panther and the People. A panther once foolishly fell into a pit. The local villagers saw her, and some of them attacked her with sticks or threw stones. Others, feeling sorry for her since she had done no harm, brought her bread to keep her strength up. Night came, and everyone went home, thinking they would find the panther dead the next day. But as soon as the panther regained her strength, she leapt out of the pit and hurried back to her den. A few days later she returned to the village, slaughtering the sheep and even killing the shepherds, laying waste to everything in a furious rampage. At this point, even those who had shown mercy to the beast began to fear what was to come. They didn't mention the damage she had caused, but begged her to spare their lives. The panther then said, "I remember who threw stones at me and who gave me bread. You need not fear. I have come back as an enemy only to those who harmed me." People who are treated with contempt often repay it in kind. Aesop and the Soothsayers. People often believe that someone with real-life experience is more reliable than a soothsayer, but they can't explain why. My little fable will be the first to provide that explanation. There was a farmer who owned a flock of sheep, and one day the sheep gave birth to lambs with human heads. Alarmed by this strange sight, the farmer hurriedly went to consult the soothsayers, deeply worried. One soothsayer told him that the birth of lambs with human heads was a sign of a life and death matter for him, as the head of the household. The soothsayer insisted that a sacrifice would be needed to avert the danger. Another soothsayer, however, said that the omen meant the farmer's wife had been unfaithful to him, and that the lambs represented the children of other men. This evil omen could only be avoided through an even greater sacrifice. The soothsayers argued among themselves, each presenting their own interpretation, which only made the farmer more anxious and terrified. Aesop, the wise old man who wasn't easily fooled, was there too. He knew nature wasn't playing tricks on him. "If you want to get rid of this omen," Aesop said, "I suggest you give your shepherds wives." 496. The Monkey and the Butcher. A man saw a monkey hanging in a butcher's shop, surrounded by other meats and goods for sale. He asked the butcher what the monkey would taste like. The butcher replied, joking, "Its flavor matches its face." I think this remark is more amusing than true. I've often met beautiful people who turned out to be terrible, and I've known many with unattractive faces who were truly excellent individuals. 497. Aesop and the Hooligan. A hooligan threw a stone at Aesop. Aesop replied, "Well done," and even gave the boy a coin. He then added, "I have no more money, but I'll show you where to get more. Look, here comes a wealthy and important man. If you throw a stone at him, the same way you threw it at me, you'll earn the reward you deserve." The hooligan, convinced, did as Aesop instructed, but his reckless daring led to his downfall. He was caught and paid the price for his crime on the cross. Success has led many to ruin. 498. The Fly and the Mule. A fly landed on a wagon pole and began to criticize the mule. "You're moving so slowly," she said. "Can't you walk faster? Watch out, or I will sting you in the neck." The mule replied, "I don't care about your words. The only one I fear is the man sitting up front, holding the pliant whip and controlling my pace with the reins. I know well when to go slow and when to run, so stop your foolish boasting." This fable mocks those who make empty threats without having the power to follow through. 499. The Children and the Mirror. A man had a daughter who was extremely ugly and a son who was remarkably handsome. While playing childish games, they happened to look into a mirror that had been left on their mother's chair. The boy boasted about his beauty, which angered the girl. She couldn't stand her brother's teasing and took everything he said as an insult to herself. Driven by jealousy, the girl ran to their father. She accused her brother of touching something meant only for women, even though he was a boy. The father hugged and kissed both children with equal affection and said, "I want you to use the mirror every day. You, my son, to remind you not to ruin your good looks with bad behavior. And you, my daughter, to remind you to make up for your appearance with good character. Remember this advice. Examine yourself often." Socrates and his friends. Socrates built himself a very modest house. I would willingly face death as Socrates did if I could achieve his fame. I would endure public disapproval if I could be vindicated after death. As expected, one of his neighbors asked, "Socrates, why would someone like you build such a tiny house?" Socrates replied, "If only I could fill it with true friends." The word friend is commonly used, but true friendship is rare. 501. Augustus and the murder. It is dangerous to believe or to disbelieve. I will briefly offer two examples. Hippolytus died because people believed his stepmother. Troy was destroyed because Cassandra was not believed. Therefore, the truth must be thoroughly explored before making foolish judgments. But lest I burden you with too many ancient tales, I will tell you a story from my own memory. A certain man loved his wife dearly. He was preparing a pure toga for his son, who was about to reach manhood. But one day, a freedman, whom he had recently granted his freedom, took him aside. The freedman believed he could be his heir. He lied about the son and spoke even worse lies about the wife, suggesting that she was meeting with a lover and dishonoring the family's name. The man, enraged by the false accusations, pretended to go on a journey. But he secretly stayed close to town. One night, he suddenly entered his house and went straight to his wife's room, where she had put the son to bed. The wife had kept watch over him, worried for his future. The man, filled with fury, searched for the light. As they rushed to the room, the man found a head, freshly shaved, in the dark. Thinking it was the lover, he stabbed the person with his sword. The room was lit, and he saw the bloody son and the wife asleep, unaware of what had happened. Overcome with guilt and grief, the man fell on his own sword, killing himself. The wife was accused and brought to trial in Rome. She was suspected of wanting to inherit the family's wealth. Her defenders worked hard to prove her innocence. The judges, unsure of the complicated case, turned to Augustus for help. Augustus ordered the freedman who had caused all this to be punished. He then declared that the woman, having lost both her son and husband, deserved pity, not punishment. He remarked that if the man had investigated the false accusations, he would not have destroyed his family. This story serves as a reminder not to trust everything you hear, but also not to disbelieve everything without thought. Many times, even those you least suspect can deceive you. 502. The Eunuch and the Scoundrel. A eunuch was in a legal dispute with a scoundrel. The scoundrel made obscene remarks and hurled insults, mocking the eunuch for his lost body parts. The eunuch replied, "This is the one thing that troubles me greatly. I lack what testify to prove my integrity. But you fool, why do you blame me for the whims of fortune? The only thing truly shameful for a man is what he deserves to suffer." Note, the word testes in the original Latin has a double meaning, referring both to witnesses and testicles. 503. The Rooster and the Pearl. A young rooster was scratching for food in a dunghill when he discovered a pearl. He exclaimed, "What a magnificent object you are, yet in such an unworthy place. If someone who valued your worth had found you, you would have long since been restored to your former splendor. But I, who found you, prefer food much more. You can be of no use to me, nor I to you. This tale is told for those who do not understand the worth of my fables.